In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, welcome to another session of Lessons from My Mother. I am coming back after a near 2 month hiatus because I had been traveling and then I had come back in all of October was just one thing after the other. So the rhythm had completely broken. And it's my fault entirely. But this series is coming to an end, but the other one is going to continue for the next couple of years until I have decoded the entire Quran. So I'm back now, and hopefully I'm fully in rhythm because there's only a few lessons left from this series, and I'm very happy to be able to come back and finish it off because I want to also interview my mum in the final few in the final one or two lessons, just to wrap it all up before we start trying to get it turned into a book, which I am very much looking forward to. So, lesson number 79 is on the right time for love. Now, I have mentioned semblances of this lesson before, and I'll detail it today because we are four boys. I have two older brothers, one younger brother, and we always um, have had great terms with each other. We've gotten along really well. And my mum comes from a house where she had three sisters and a brother. So and my father has a sister, and they're well aware of gender dynamics. They're well aware of what it's like for young boys growing up liking girls and girls growing up liking boys. They're well aware of that. So my mum used to say, even as early as grade five, because as you see, I'm incredibly friendly, and this personality never changed. There might have been times in my life where I might have been slightly quieter, but I've just been this extroverted ball of energy for 37 years, and I'm happy this way. So I was like this even when I was 10. I was running around making friends and boys and girls and everything. And even though in our minds, there wasn't any difference. Oh, you're playing with a boy, you're playing with a girl, it doesn't really matter. In the minds of their parents or the girls themselves, that could have been something, or there might have been something. We were too young to understand it or unpack it. Um, because I remember when I was 10, I would be invited to a lot of houses to play around and to join birthday parties and to join events. And as we became 13, 14, this is by the way, Pakistan in the 90s, the invitations kind of became more um, specialized. That certain types of friends would invite you and others wouldn't. And those others were typically of a different gender. That's what I observed at that time, and we didn't care at that time. It was like, "Eh, okay," but it's something I still do remember because friends who I had in school, who I'm still friends with now, and they're living happy lives, and we're gladly in touch for 20 years or so. And in the middle, we never really talked about, hey, why did we all get distanced those 5, 10 years? But if you lived in Pakistan in the 90s, or even now, you'd realize that families start protecting their girls from boys and boys from girls around that age because there is a lot of danger associated with teenagers indulging in sexual is not the right term, intersexual activity. So you because you are just becoming aware of your hormones. You're just becoming aware of your hormones. And it's just happening and the controls aren't there. They develop over time. And you're unable to rectify or balance. That's why, young boys and young girls are out of control. That's why they need to be um, disciplined, policed, whatever word you choose, guided, channeled, put the energy into sports or science or research or whatever, but they have to be guided. So our guidance used to come in this manner, that there was a blanket no girlfriend policy. Blanket. Like, no, it's not happening. And because we were in Pakistan at that time, wasn't really much of a debate from our side. We didn't say, well, I would like one. We'd say, okay, it's not as if we could go out and snap our fingers and 10,000 would show up. You'd have to really find it. And even if you found someone, that person, would they be interested in you or not? Would their parents allow it used to become a whole thing. But that training started around grade 5. That no, like girls are fine, but you're supposed to maintain that distance. And as you, whoever's watching this now or in the future, as you might have seen, as you have already seen, my mum explains the lesson and then at many times details it for us beyond our understanding, but outlines the understanding which we would come up to in the coming years. So initially, mum would simply say, no, no, just don't get too, the word she used was chummy. Don't get too chummy with girls. And we'd say, okay. They don't play sports with us anyway. So, okay. That was it. And then after a while, she started saying, around 12, 13, when I was 12, 13, she started saying, no, okay, you can speak to them and work with them and do projects, but all these things you see in movies, the great Shah Rukh Khan and the great other actors, all the actors and movies and books that you see, because I was 10 when Titanic came out. So that became part of our lexicon. Oh, to die for the one you love. Oh, that painting, that became part of our lexicon. As opposed to somebody who might have been that age at my parents' time. The exposure to media was different. And just like now, my nephew is 13 and I love him to bits. But if I put him next to myself when I was 13, he is infinitely more knowledgeable. Infinitely. Because of the smartphone and because of streaming services and because of social media and because of friends who have access to similar instruments and diversified sources. So your friend watches Netflix and watches a different TV show, you watch Disney and watch a different TV show, and then you bring them together so you're able to pool your knowledge resources just like that. I used to read Archie comics in class, and I would pass them off to my friends to read them. That was the extent of it. We wouldn't watch the news because who watches the news when they're 12? And that would be the limit. So so the exposure that we had at that time, my mum would say, don't get too chummy. These things that you see in movies, that a 16-year-old boy is in love with a 16-year-old girl and they get happily married and whatever, and they fight against the system together. It's aspirational. There's another word that she used. In my recollection of it, in my understanding, this is what she meant. That it's aspirational to long for a Romeo and Juliet sort of love, but there is a right time for love. And this is it when you're 12 or 13. And we wouldn't push back until we started falling in love. I remember my first experience with this divine emotion was when I was 16. And I went to China and I fell in love with a girl, and we stayed together or in touch for years. First on, then sometimes off, but mostly on. We stayed in touch and we tried to make it work. A relationship that you start at 16 is hard to maintain, especially with long distance. But I remember feeling that way. But I also remember a few months before that trip happened, I watched a movie, one of my favorite actors and actresses, Shah Rukh Khan, Rani Mukherjee. The movie is called Chalte Chalte. And I remember calling my friend in Pakistan and saying, man, you know what? That's how life should be. I want that. And he was like, yeah, man. And we were both 15. And we are like, yes, that's how life should be. Oh, that would be so wonderful. Because around 15, 16, you start regulating your hormones a bit and your emotions, and you start saying, well, I don't want to just attain physical pleasure. There's emotional pleasure and comfort associated here too. I want to experience that too. And that's in these settings. Oh, look. So in old Indian movies, you wouldn't really show life after marriage. You'd show the courtship, the pursuit, the rebellion, the fight, blah, 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 and then victory at the end. But then in the early 2000s, you started seeing life after marriage too. And we say, oh, this is how it's going to be. This is what I want. If you don't believe me, or if you contest with that point of view, ask any person born in the 80s or early 90s who has seen the TV show Friends, the greatest show, the sitcom in American TV history, probably global history top 10, and ask them, have you or have you not, at a moment of your time, thought, this is the life I want to live? And I can confirm for you, the answer would be a resounding yes. Because you look at that lifestyle, and once the art can invoke comfort, it can become your reality. It can become your aspirational reality. This is what I want. I want to live in a two-bed apartment where I can walk across and walk into my friend's apartment and fall in love with one of them and move in. This is the Monica Chandler story. I want to be able to do that. Obviously, it's not a reality. It doesn't happen that way. So our mum was, I think she had foresight, because we never expressed to her that, oh, I want to be like Shah Rukh Khan and fall in love with a girl on a train. But she knows us, and she knows young boys and young girls, and she already saw that coming. So she advised us against it. And then when I went down this road at 16, the first time at 16, I remember first she was like, okay, let him play it out. He's young, he feels this. The worst thing you can do is try to restrict a teenager from anything. Let's be honest. The more you push, the more they're going to push back, and they have infinitely more energy than you do. Infinitely. While you may have wisdom, intelligence, knowledge, patience, all they have is energy, grit, raw drive, and they just push like a ram, and they keep ramming until they break through. So she let me loose, as it were, and then eventually she starts saying, if you're serious about this, fine. But love alone doesn't do anything. And there's a right time for love. And I'd say, what time is that? I'm in love right now. And at 16, you think you have everything figured out. So you say, well, I know all the answers already because I'm 16. And she'd say, uh-huh. Yeah. Anyway, no, there's a right time for love because it doesn't fill your stomachs. It can fill your soul temporarily, but it doesn't fill your stomach. You need to have a job. You need to have a plan. You need to do this. You need to do that. And very gently, I remember she'd say, "Well, you need to do this. Like, look at your dad. Your dad was a doctor. Your dad did this. We fell in love, but we couldn't get married until all of these systems were in place. Blah blah blah." And she would outline it for us. And obviously, I love my mum to death. So there would be no screaming matches or fights. No, I will change the. No, that would never happen. We would internalize a lot of that advice. It's not just me, my brothers too, and most of my close friends too. Whenever men and women, sorry, men and women as teenagers, when they fall in love, my friends group is typically aligned with their parents. Typically said, okay, yeah, we'll take your advice on board. I really have to think if I know someone who went against familial advice. Mm, can't. Um, can't. Can't. Not really. There have been some who have been interested, but not really. So that was the advice. As we grew older, obviously that relationship finished. Another one happened. You fall in love again, fall in love again, fall in love again. Then you start thinking, is there really a right time for love? What does that mean? Am I supposed to orchestrate all the external factors, put them into place, and when that happens, only then is the heart allowed And when this question started becoming part of the conversation with mum, then the conversation got so much deeper. And I can't remember exactly. I think it was late teens, early 20s when this started becoming the thing. And then she'd say, you can always fall in love. You can always have feelings. You can always have emotions. You can always meet anyone anywhere. Not just romantic love. You can be in love. You can love your friends too, right? You can love your pets. You can love your parents. You can love your colleagues and your professors. You can love a lot of people. But the sort of love you're talking about carries with it a huge responsibility. And because we're four boys, she would tell us about the responsibility of protection, of financial and resource provision, of maintaining sense and sensibility. Because if you lose your handle and you break somebody's nose or kill them, that's a crime. So keeping yourself in check at all times, regardless of what the other person's saying, that's a big responsibility. That's why drinking alcohol or getting high or using substances is dangerous, because you lose your self control and you could beat someone up or kill them. So she would train us in our responsibilities. When our questions became deeper, so did her answers. So yes, you can fall in love anytime, but a 10-year-old falling in love, how fleeting is that? Is that actually going to stick? If it sticks, marvelous. We'll write books about you. It doesn't stick 99% of the times. It doesn't, for a variety of factors. That's why traditionally families have been actively involved in the orchestration of marriages, because the tying, what's the word, the engagement of the concepts of marriage and love is a new concept. Marriage, you can do your research on it. I didn't know the names of the scholars or whatever. Marriage typically hasn't been tied to, oh, I love this person, therefore I'm going to marry them. That's post Shakespearean and maybe in some other cultures. But we've been around for 100, 300,000 years, and known history, we've been around for 5, 6,000 years. Love really isn't mentioned as much as duty and responsibility and purpose and so forth. So she'd say that you can certainly fall in love and you can certainly love people, but what happens after that? What do you do with that? You could, okay, I love Shah Rukh Khan. I love Robert Downey Jr. They're some of my favorite people. Now what? Do I go to his house? Do I call him up? Do I send him an email? Do I write a script for him? Do I try to marry him? Do I try to force him into letting me become an actor? Do I try to invite him to my universe? What? What is the execution of this thing that you're feeling? If you don't have an execution, what is the point? Now, I'm extrapolating from what she had said, but I say the same. If you're going to feel something and not do anything about it, does that feeling matter? Can't you create a hierarchy of feelings? Now, my feeling friends would say, oh, Ali, what's wrong with you? And my ENFPs and perceiving and feelers will all have issues. But I'm an ENTJ and I'm going to highlight things in this manner. You could always hierarchically rank your feelings and say, these are feelings I need to act upon. These are feelings I don't need to act upon. These are feelings I cannot act upon. Therefore, I have no need to feel them. Honestly, you could do that. The fact that people don't is their decision. So you could simply say, I love this person. What am I going to do about it? Okay, I'll tell them. If they say yes, then we're together. And what do I do about it? I don't have a job. I don't have a house. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have a house. I don't have this. She doesn't have that. What are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to meet in the forest and kiss. Yes. Oh, we're going to go to the movies and kiss. Yes. And then I don't have money to buy her sunglasses. I don't have money to buy this. She doesn't have money to buy this. I don't have resources to do this. I have to do exams. I have to do this. And all of those things start coming into play once you start playing it out. If you don't play it out, if you're one of those fortunate people who are able to live in the moment and just be without thinking, then great. But after a couple of weeks of the honeymoon period, you start realizing, okay, well, I'm in this thing now. This is who I am. Where is this going? What am I going to be doing with this? And if you cannot come up with an action plan, you can paint it romantically. If the word is too clinical or dry for you, they're like, oh, action plan, I don't want it. You can paint it romantically. If you can't come up with a dream of your entwined destinies, I can paint it however you want to hear it. But the point is, if you can't see the future or envision the future, then that feeling there or that emotion there is not really beneficial to you or to the other person. Now, some might say, oh no, what about living in the moment? Yeah, what about it? What about it? The moment is transient, it's fleeting. You can have a moment, or you can envision and plan and build a lifetime. You can build that rather than this, a point of time or a time period. You see, I I see them very clearly. And I've given this advice to a lot of friends, sometimes students, sometimes colleagues, and thankfully it resonates with them where I say, look, living moment to moment is useless. It's it's the lowest form of intellect or spirituality, right? It's try to try to think of an animal or try to think of an infant. They don't have the capacity to lay out a plan and a purpose, but we do. So if you're going to do something and there's no outlook, you should really question whether it's worth doing or not. So it goes for love. The right time for love probably starts happening, for love that you can execute, probably starts happening once you've somehow managed some of your resources. And in my opinion, this has to be a gender neutral point. I know traditionalists would say, no, men have to do this. No, women shouldn't be responsible for resources. I kind of disagree. I think, yes, we have differences. Yes, we are built differently and we can have strengths and weaknesses, but there's no harm in acquiring education and resources. So you are self-sufficient. Self-sufficient does not mean that you neglect everyone else and try to turn yourself into whatever, a dangerous sociopath. It doesn't mean that at all. Self-sufficient simply means that you are responsible as a functioning adult. And I think that should be men and women. And whether it's education or domestic chores or errands, one must be capable of doing everything. That's my opinion. Once you're able to look after yourself, that is when the right time of love starts developing. That's my opinion. Did I follow it? No. Did my brothers follow it? Well, no. Somewhat. I was the big rebel. I was the big rebel. But did they follow it? No, not really. But that is really sound advice. I also know, hopefully, when I have kids, when they reach this age, I'd give them the same lesson. And I know for a fact that they won't follow it. They'd be like, no, well, we decided this. And you say, oh, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But it's my story as well. But the lesson on its own certainly has merit. So when my mum used to say, stay away from girls, don't interact with them, don't fight with them, just focus on this, just focus on this. And then that developed into there's a right time for love. And then that developed into you can love everyone and anything, but what are you going to do about it? It's slowly built into an understanding where you say, ah, okay, and now things make sense. But anyway, I'm going to stop this right here. I'm glad I was able to come back because I haven't been back online for a while. Lesson 79, the right time for love. I will do lesson 80, and I suppose 80 is a nice round number where we can stop. Either I do it with my mum or I just do it here. and then we can stop and turn it into a book, and hopefully uh, everything goes uphill from there, further uphill. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful, wonderful remaining Sunday.